Media Monitoring Africa Director William Bird joins us to discuss what is going on. William, thanks for your time. Glad you're able to join us this morning.
Good morning, Leon. Thanks for having me on the program.
Perhaps you can just give us a little bit of background and talk to us about what is at the crux of the issues in this long, drawn-out case that has gone through so many different ministers.
So the basic issue is that we're needing to transition from analogue, so basically where you just needed a television set and a set of little bunny ears, aerial, to digital, which has all sorts of advantages, but there it means using a different frequency, and you need a different receiver, in some instances a different aerial, in order to be able to receive that. And what that's necessitated is that because there are millions of poor people in South Africa, government agreed many years ago, I forget quite the year now, that they would provide those with an income of less than 3,500 rand per month per household, would provide them with a set-top box. In other words, to make sure that they didn't get cut off and that they didn't have that extra significant expense of getting digital equipment in order to be able to continue to receive free-to-air television, like Morning Live, for example. So towards the end of last year, government then announced, and on the 1st of October, they said people have got 3 weeks to register, and we're going to be cutting off at the end of March 31st. So they gave people a very short time, and ETV decided to take the minister to court because of their concerns around their business model. MMA, Media Monitoring Africa, and SOS sought to intervene, which we were successful in doing because we think there's a significant public interest there, which is that if we had gone ahead with the cut-off date of the 31st of March, millions of poor people would have been cut off. They would just have been left in the dark for the simple reason that they haven't been able to get access to a set-top box. There's a whole range of reasons why. Now, the SABC stayed out of that fight, broadly speaking, and understandably so, because they don't want to be seen to be in conflict with the minister. You know, their minister, she's the shareholder of the SABC. Unfortunately, the minister behaves in such a manner that she forces the SABC into a corner where they have no choice, because every single free-to-air broadcaster, community television, ETV, and SABC, and all of the others in between, had to say, this is going to be an absolutely catastrophic thing for us if it gets cut off on the 31st.
Yeah.
So then the SABC released a statement, and that's resulted in the minister basically throwing her toys out of the cart.
Indeed, and we'll get to this letter, this letter that we have at the moment. We'll talk to it, but I just want to get back to what the court has said. What reasons did the court give for ordering a postponement of the analogue switch off by another 3 months?
So basically they said that because they didn't think that the department would be able to do the installations that they said they would be able to do by the 31st of March. So indirectly the court saying basically we don't, given the past behavior and the slow rate of uptake and installation, we don't think that you'll be able to meet this 31st deadline. So they've extended that to the 31st of June in order to install the ones that they had said that the government would install by the 31st of March. They've then given them another 3 months after that to install a further number of set-top boxes, so that effectively that part of the digital transition can be completed, and then theoretically they can then switch off.
I mean, just in practical terms, what does the judgment actually? What are the implications thereof for this for this whole movement to switch off? I mean, another 3 months delay, is it going to complicate things more, or is it just? I mean, we're just so used to this. Is it, you know, what are the implications? Let me ask that.
So I think that it means that poor people means that they won't lose their television. So that's a really good thing. It gives government a bit of breathing room to actually get the installations done. Hopefully we can see people working together on proper campaigns, making sure that they roll them out more effectively, and that they can actually get on and get done with the set-top box installation. We'll have to be setting up ways and means of seeing how we can monitor that, make sure that they actually are doing the installations, and that when they reach that revised cut-off date, that actually they've done the installations that they've committed themselves to doing. So in real terms, it means for the poor, it means that they've got a better chance of not losing their free-to-air, breathing room for all of the broadcasters, because they're not going to lose their audiences suddenly in massive numbers. and breathing room, in fact, for government, because it means that they've now got extra time to do what they've already committed to do by the 31st.
Yeah.
In terms of other signal distribution issues, it makes no difference. You know, the spectrum auction happened last week. There's still going to be a lot of way to go before any of that actually starts being used by any of the mobile operators. So it's not going to affect anyone too negatively in terms of this, other than the fact that it still keeps that huge pressure on government to install the set-top boxes.
Why the delays, though? I mean, it's just, it's something that has been going on for years, and the amount of ministers that have been overseeing this, I've lost count. But why? Why are we delaying this? What is happening?
So the current minister, in one of her interviews, said that there'd been 13 ministers before who'd been tasked with addressing this, and that's part of the reason, right? In a decade, you've had more than one minister per year, and part of that is about the fact that there's not been a consistent policy approach by government. You know, we only now, after 19 years or something, getting a revised policy for the media sector. So that shows that it's just not been a sector that's been a core focus. Thankfully, this minister sees that this is a key issue. She wants to get it done, and everyone supports that and supports the delivery. But, you know, by and large, you know, there's been a lot of complexities, a lot of fights, etc. But it's also been, you know, failure by the government clearly and unambiguously, and failure by Parliament clearly and unambiguously to hold government to account, to ask them to actually monitor, ask proper questions when ministers go and report, and that, broadly speaking, has not happened. You know, and there've also been too many other disasters for them to focus on. You know, for decades they've been trying to wrestle control of the SABC and see how much they can interfere with that, and now we're seeing a little bit of a clear hangover of that, with this minister now threatening to cut off funds.
Yeah, and let's get there, because this was all revealed in a leaked letter that was addressed to the chairperson of the SABC board, where, as you say, the minister, besides the funding part, which we'll talk about as well, is also threatening to write to Parliament to withdraw all the SABC quarterly performance reports submitted under her signature, because according to her, the SABC misrepresented its financials and blamed other factors. Now, in the statement issued last week, the organisation is blaming its financial woes on the switch-off. What's at play here?
Look, you know, this is clearly about clearly a direct reaction to the statement that the board made. And as I said, you know, the minister pushed the SABC into a corner where they had no choice but to either say, we're either going to fall in line and comply with what the minister says, or we're going to assert our independence and we're going to say, no, we have to operate in the best interests of the public broadcaster, not in the best interests of the minister. And those two are very often fundamentally different things, as it is in this case. So in response to that, she then decides that, okay, she's clearly very angry and upset about this, because it's you know, you've got your broadcaster, effectively, you're the shareholder, and they're saying to you, no, we don't want to go in this direction. You know, saying that's the case, and now she's threatening all sorts of issues, and it's clearly a reaction to that, and something that I think really smacks of ministerial interference. In fact, we're busy consulting our lawyers to have a look at that, because it's a very real problem when your minister, because you assert your independence, says no. We're going to now withdraw our funding. We're going to withdraw these reports. You've misrepresented this. You've misrepresented that. Again, why is she only bringing that up now? If it was the case that she had seen that, or if that was the view that she'd held earlier, why weren't they engaging on these issues over several months? You know, a lot of these things just don't make sense, and the arguments that are being presented by the department, unfortunately, don't make sense. They've been saying things like, well, the SABC could start an education channel which will bring in 5 million views. Well, maybe they can, and in fact, we know they're already running an educational channel. But that isn't going to stop millions of poor people from being cut off from free-to-air television, and consequently SABC losing its advertisers.
Yeah, so it almost looks like there's these are so many different issues that almost don't come together. It feels like it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. I mean, because one of the big issues to come out of this letter yesterday is that the minister has also told the SABC that she's going to notify the finance minister of her intention to withhold the release of the next tranches of the turnaround strategy financial assistance due to the same reasons. I mean, this truly, from what we're seeing from the outside, looks like a full-blown showdown between the SABC and the minister. I mean, where will this spectacle land, the public broadcaster and the public mandate at the same time?
Well, firstly, it's a clear effort to try and interfere and show her extreme displeasure with the decision of the board. And secondly, it's clearly also an effort, I think, to try and get the board to either resign or at least get the chair and deputy chair to resign because of this position that they've adopted. And I really hope that the board stands firm on this. The decision they took is clear and rational, in line with what every other free-to-air broadcaster was asserting. If there's an issue with the financials, bring it out, put it out in the open, ask them to go and answer to Parliament by all means. You know, the SABC reports to them on a quarterly basis. Why hasn't Parliament raised these issues before this? If Parliament is the one that's there, why is she suddenly now saying, well, this is the case? We know that the only thing behind this isn't in fact the idea that the SABC has done something wrong. It's the fact that they have asserted their independence, and the minister is now very angry and upset about that and wants to take it out and say, well, fine, if you don't do that, I'm going to cut funding from you. And you know, it's a completely irrational response from the minister, and really one that you'd have hoped that she would have considered, had a nice cup of tea and a sit down and said, okay, let's see how we deal with this in a more mature manner that isn't going to plunge the broadcaster into another crisis if I indeed decide to go ahead with this, or what are the consequences of delaying funding even further. That doesn't take us anywhere with digital migration. It doesn't take us anywhere with getting a broadcaster that's more sustainable. It doesn't take us anywhere with a better relationship between the board and the minister. All it does is it heightens tensions and seeks to drive a wedge between an independent board and the minister. And it's just a deeply, profoundly unfortunate response by the minister.
Just as we wrap up, because this one pertains now, of course, to viewers and how they get to view these free-to-air channels. I mean, according to yesterday's judgment, the minister must ensure that all remaining government-subsidised set-top boxes are installed by the 30th of September. I mean, I have heard from numerous people, more people than I like to mention, that these are not even available. They tell them to go down to the post office, and they go to the post office, and the post office shrug their shoulders and say, we haven't had those for ages, or no, sorry, no idea where you can get those. I mean, that's just of word of mouth from people I'm hearing. Do you honestly think that the government is going to meet this deadline?
Well, again, that's where our minister should be putting her focus. She should be saying, now, great, there's certain issues we won in this court case. We're going to move ahead now on this with pace. Try and work together with people, withdraw her embarrassment of a letter, and then she can then start to look at saying, well, how do we actually set about getting these things installed and making sure that they're there? That's what she should be focused on, clearly and unambiguously. We know we're still consulting with our lawyers over this judgment because we need to make sure that those things are installed, and we'll do whatever we can as public interest organisations to make sure that poor people don't have their signal cut off just because government thinks it's a good idea to implement an anti-poor policy.
Yeah, let's leave it there for this morning. William, thank you, as always, for talking to us, just giving us analysis there. Media Monitoring Africa Director William Bird discussing the decision by the High Court in Pretoria yesterday, which ordered Communications Minister Khumbudzo not to complete the analogue television switch-off that was planned to be completed by the 31st of March, and also giving us a bit of perspective on the current standoff between the SABC and the minister over the SABC's financial concerns if the switch-off happened as it was planned, and the minister's threat to withdraw any further funding from government as a shareholder.